Hello, everyone. It is 30 past the hour, so we are going to start with our next session. Following the session, there will be Q&A. You can type that either in the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom. If you would like to use the captioning, there is an option at the bottom of your screen that says Show Captions, and that will provide captions for the duration of the presentation. Today, we're welcoming Kayla Whitehead, an electronic resources librarian from Tulane University, and Matthew Jabali, an associate college librarian for technical services at Colorado College. And they will be talking to us about burnout and technical services library workers. Can peer mentoring help? Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us. So I'm going to share my slides real quick. All right, so Jackie was kind enough to introduce us, but I will introduce ourselves again. Hi, my name is Kayla Whitehead. I'm the Electronic Resources Librarian at Tulane University Libraries, and joining me today is...
Hi, I'm Matt Jabali. I'm currently the Associate College Librarian for Technical Services at Colorado College.
Advanced. There we go. All right. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you about the existing literature regarding burnout in libraries and proposed solutions of slow librarianship and peer mentoring. And we'll also give you time to share experiences, and we'll ask you to provide feedback regarding a peer mentoring program for NASIG. So what is burnout? I'm using the World Health Organization's definition today. It's chronic workplace stress that has not been managed successfully. It can be characterized by feeling depleted or exhausted, increased distance from your job, mental distance from your job, feelings of negativity or cynicism, and reduced professional effectiveness, and judging one's work performance too harshly. So on a particularly rough Monday morning in January, I was reading an article in Scholarly Kitchen, and it was talking about mental health and talking about burnout. And they wrote something really helpful. They said burnout is not a personal failure, and I really needed to hear that morning. So burnout is not a personal failure. It is caused by your workplace. So let's talk about the workplace causes of burnout. So I am going to say here that there are different types of burnout, but we're just talking about workplace burnout today. So workload, when your workload exceeds your capacity, there's too much work and not enough time. You can feel a lack of control or autonomy at work, and that is another cause. So people like to feel as though they are trusted to do the work and that they have freedom to do their jobs. So this is where sometimes bad managers play a role in causing burnout. Micromanaging is workplace abuse because they are taking away the employee's sense of autonomy. So there are times when effort and reward aren't matching. So this could be a lack of acknowledgement, both interpersonally and socially. And you could also feel that you're not getting the monetary award or you're not getting the reward that's matching your effort that you're putting in. And that's another cause of burnout. So you could also be feeling a lack of community, a lack of interaction and collaboration with colleagues, and this can lead to isolation. You could feel that there's the lack of fairness in your workplace. So this could show as a lack of respect, lack of honesty and candor, and the lack of trust between colleagues and in the workplace. This last one, I'm going to give an example. So organizational values and individual values don't match. And I think we're seeing this now often as our institutions and libraries are stepping away from parts of their mission that specifically say they're aiming towards diversity, equity, inclusion. And if this is something that you would like to work towards and your institution is stepping away from it, I think that can be an additional cause of burnout. Your values and your organization values don't match, and they can be really disheartening. So I would like to say it would be disingenuous to pretend like the current political climate doesn't play a role on top of the usual workplace and systemic causes. Librarians are dealing with book bans and cuts to the IMLS funding and loss of important resources. I feel like I'm watching attacks on our profession, watching librarians react with concern and even grief, and experiencing that myself. And I think that plays a role in burnout as well. So let's talk a little bit about the technical services experience. So I'm not saying that tech services workers are more burnt out than other library workers. I think if I wanted to say that, I need to do some sort of study or survey. But I do think that the conditions for burnout are present in the technical services environment. Hold on 1 second. Let me take a breath, take a drink. So the increase in acquisitions of electronic resources is placing more demand than ever on technical services workers. The work is becoming more technical, more complex, and is constantly changing. Workload expectations have increased, but salaries and staffing levels have not increased in many cases. And this is where I think it might be useful to talk a little bit about my own experiences. I worked at a library that consistently had staffing and retention problems, and I don't think this is at all unusual. There was a period of time when half of our e-resources team, they left for other opportunities. It was just me and one other librarian doing the bulk of acquisitions and e-resources management for the department. And she was also doing ALMA systems related tasks as well. So based on my personal experiences and based on what I've observed over the years, I think technical services workers are at real risk for burnout. And again, I think I would like to mention that acquisitions and electronic resource and cataloging work are also becoming more interconnected. So this leads to additional changes in our workflows and changes to our work department. And I feel like that's happening a lot. So let's start talking about what we could do. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but the solutions for burnout in a lot of the literature focus on managing the individual's burnouts and symptoms. So you'll see a lot of things about work-life balance and self-care. It's important to manage burnout symptoms, but I think there are other options as far as tackling systemic and organizational issues, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I do think there were some helpful suggestions about work-life burnout. Working fewer hours, taking more breaks. I find that exercising and going outside has been a good solution for me, although that won't work for everyone. I put teaching time management here, but I don't love it as a solution, as it seems to be blaming the individual for not managing an unsustainable workload properly. And however, like I said before, people like to think they're in control of their work environment. If that helps you have that sense of control, sure, take a class, add whatever skills that you're interested in adding. I recently attended Electronic Resources and Libraries Conference back in March in Austin, and Bobby Newman gave her keynote speech about burnout in libraries. And she said the following thing that really spoke to me. She said, you cannot self-care your way out of burnout if your workplace doesn't change. She also said you can't meditate your way out of burnout, which I felt, a little called out on that because I've certainly tried to do that. But it also, I guess it made me feel a little bit like, okay, I'm not bad at meditating. There is definitely more to it. And the more to it is the systemic and organizational issues. So there is literature that addresses these things. So whenever we're addressing the health and wellness of librarians, we have to discuss Fobazi-Ittar's vocational awe. So simply put, vocational awe is the idea we have as a profession that librarians and librarians are inherently good and beyond critique. And this leads to the ideas of librarianship as a calling. So it's not just work, right? It's not just a job, it's supposed to be your passion. This leads to overwork. This leads to us making the jokes that we didn't get into librarianship for the money. And so we're being undercompensated in these cultures of overwork and martyrdom. So she actually proposes solutions that address systemic and organizational issues. So she proposes addressing undercompensation, creating healthy workplaces, and treating workers well. Okay. I'm going to take another drink. Another important piece of scholarship is the work of Katrina Davis Kendrick. She's been studying low morale in librarianship for years. I'm just going to focus on one study today, but she's done a lot of work in this area. Some important points in her 2017 study of low morale in academic libraries, she connected workplace abuse and bullying to burnout and low morale, and connected low morale to mental and physical health issues. Participants in the study use similar coping mechanisms than the ones that we just talked about, trying to create more work-life balance and self-care activities. The participants also work to reduce or end their low morale experience. And by that, I mean, in some cases, they reported workplace abuse to campus officials, whether it's administrators or HR. And in many cases, they found campus officials to not really be helpful. HR is often not your friend. I think we've heard that before. And in some cases, these library professionals ended up leaving just to get out of the low morale experience. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. People will leave the profession if we do not address these problems. And if we're working towards a more diverse environment, we need everyone to stick around. So we need to find ways to alleviate burnout while addressing the work culture that contributes to burnout. So something I really liked about the vision statement on Monday, our vision talk on Monday, is when Amy Turin's, when she talked about that, she asked, do we really need to, I'm paraphrasing, of course, she asked, do we need to do everything as fast as we've been doing it? And then, so that made me feel really good about this next part. I've been so interested in slow librarianship lately. So what it is, it's a movement. It's based on the slow food movement. It's intended to be anti-racist. It's intended to be responsive to user and community needs. It's a value-driven practice. It is all about slowing down and listening, basically. So the focus is on relationship building. It's about understanding user needs and providing equitable services. It's about supporting staff as whole people. It supports workers and builds stronger relationships within our communities. So Meredith Farkas has written several great blog posts about this theory. And in her explanation of the term, she states slow librarianship requires us to look beyond ourselves to try to help to create the conditions that allow everyone to slow down. That means that those of us with more job security and autonomy need to fight structures that create precarity, scarcity, and competition. So community care is at the heart of slow librarianship. I've been thinking about this a lot and how I can implement this for my department and for myself. It really does need to be a whole library that embraces the idea for it to work, though, or that's how it seems. And when I talk to colleagues about it, they'll say nothing is slow. And I do agree. When I'm working on an e-resources problem, it doesn't feel like slow work to me. So I don't know how to make e-resources work slow down. But I think there is value in being intentional in your work and listening to your community. And that I think this is something that I want to work for myself and also for my colleagues as well. Right. So before I hand it over to Matt, I am going to talk a little bit, we're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with peer mentoring. So in the fall of 2021, I was a part of something called Pimento. So I was not one of the creators. I was just a simple participant. So this was a peer mentoring program for mid-career professionals. The creators of the program were tired of professional development that, again, it didn't really speak to the whole person. They were just teaching them how to be administrators. They felt like the mid-career experience was a lonely and isolating experience. They wanted to create candid and safe spaces to connect. They wanted to create community, and I think they were really successful in doing so. This program helped me a lot and provided inspiration for my poster session as well. I know last summer a lot of you stopped by and gave me ideas and helped me make this presentation today. But again, I wanted to move forward with peer mentoring. I felt in order to tackle burnout, we needed to create community. And I thought peer mentoring would be a good way to do it. And for now, I'm going to switch it over to Matt.
Hello. First, I'd like to thank Kayla for giving me some minutes from her presentation to talk about the work that she and I have been doing to form a NASIG peer mentoring pilot program. So for me, the story starts about 8 years ago when I first joined NASIG. I was a new electronic resources librarian, and I joined NASIG to have a professional community and to really find some service options as I was going to have tenure requirements at my last job. I saw that NASIG had a mentoring program when I joined, and I was really excited because I thought I really needed some mentoring from an experienced librarian as I started a new job in a new area of librarianship. When I read a little bit more, though, I saw that the mentoring program was for library school students. And so instead of being a mentee, as I expected, I became a mentor. And I really enjoyed the program, getting to know library students and learning about their pathways of librarianship. I'm now in my 8th round of being a mentor, and it's been really one of my favorite parts of the NASIG community. But I still felt like there was a need, that the need that I had when I was starting my job was something that NASIG could help with. When I was co-chair of the mentoring committee, we started opening up the program to early career professionals. And this year, my mentee is a professional librarian, and rapidly advancing to the point where the line between mentor and mentee is really blurry at this point. And he'll be giving a talk later today that I'm really excited to see. So picking up the story, about a year ago, I saw Kayla's poster at NASIG 2024 in Spokane. You can see the back of my head. I'm the one wearing that red plaid shirt. And you can see Kayla's poster on the left and I think Kayla's arms sticking out a little bit too. She had I saw that she had an interest in peer mentoring, and we were both going to be on the NASIG Mentoring and Student Outreach Committee. So we started talking about ideas for hosting a peer mentoring group in the coming year with the hope of expanding it later. At that point, we really didn't know what we were doing. We just knew that we had something that we wanted to do and that we were together on it. So meanwhile, my own personal situation was evolving. I had taken an interim department leadership at one library. And I was actually getting ready to leave for another library at the same time, where I am now. At my previous jobs, I was really at the limits of my workload and expectation, starting to feel a little bit of that burnout myself as both, yeah, person above me and the person below me in the hierarchy left at around the same time, and I did all 3 jobs for a while with no real hope of having them replaced. So I found myself needing connections outside of my institution and some type of mentoring experience, especially for those who are new in technical services leadership. Kayla was in a similar position with new jobs and elevated responsibilities, and we both knew we needed some kind of peer mentoring, and we didn't see that the opportunity really existed as we wanted it, so we decided that we'd have to make it. Do you want to advance, Kayla? Thanks. Even when you know you need to make something, it isn't always clear what you need to make. And so something that I regularly fall back on is the community of practice model. Wenger Trainer write that communities of practice are formed by people who engage in a process of collective learning in a shared domain of human endeavor. I think While it's not specifically a peer mentoring program by definition, I think it really has a lot to offer and can kind of shape things in a way that's good for peer mentoring and in general for professionals of all types. So the authors write that a community of practice has three basic characteristics: a domain or area of interest that's shared by the members. In this case, our pilot program and NASIG generally is tending to be academic librarianship, typically something, some aspect of e-resources, technical services, scholarly communications, or related areas. Second, there needs to be a community. And for our group, we built within the existing NASIG community, identifying individuals that Kayla and I knew from past NASIG experiences, sometimes service on committees, past NASIG presentations and co-presenters, and people that we had met in the mentoring program as well. Finally, a community of practice needs to be focused to some extent on the practice in the domain area. In this case, we're all librarians talking about how to best practice librarians. In many cases, some of us were new to library leadership too, and that was an area that many of us were looking to grow in. I feel like the bar to call a group a community of practice is pretty low, but that's a lot of what I like about it. I think there's a lot of learning and joy that can come from having regular groups of people you can talk to about how to best do the work and that you have dedicated yourselves to. I think there's a real need for connection that's cross-institutional. For example, when I was an electronic resources and collections librarian, I was really the only one of me at my institution. And so having connections with other people who know my job, who can give me advice about how to do it and do it better, and who understand what it takes to do the job is really helpful as opposed to my other colleagues at my own workplace who kind of knew what I did, but really were focused in other areas of librarianship. Now, as I'm kind of a middle manager, I find it helpful to have contacts outside my library for a lot of different reasons. I try to be very careful about what I say about my boss or those I supervise with folks in my own library. So being able to talk to people with similar responsibilities at other schools is really helpful. And that brings us back to the peer mentoring pilot group that Kayla and I started. First, one thing we did was adopt a model of planning as practice. And so whenever we met to plan the group, we also started by checking in with each other and kind of mentoring each other as we went. We talked a lot about our jobs, what challenges we were facing, and gave each other ideas and encouragement. If you're looking for informal peer mentoring, I would suggest starting with the relationships you already have and building peer mentoring on top of them. Sometimes you don't have to stick to that agenda strictly and just to the outcomes you want to achieve, but you can build in that semi-formal peer mentoring at the beginning or end of your other meetings. Second, we set about inviting others to our group. As I mentioned, we wanted to draw from the NASIG community and to begin strengthening those existing ties. I knew most of the other members of the group from a positive conversation at a conference or shared committee work, but none of them were really close friends or people who I likely would have called up or reached out to regularly before. As a result of the program, though, I feel like I have stronger ties at more institutions and with more people than I've had before. For the format, we tried to make things as simple as possible. They're just 1 hour once a month for 6 months. We try to keep the stakes pretty low. It's just has been just like a 6-hour total commitment. And we started with 6 people, but rather later dropped to 5 once one person needed to focus on some other things. I actually think that 5 is a really good number for a group like this. We all fit well on a Zoom screen, and there's enough room for everyone to talk, but there's still an expectation that you're listening most of the time. To be honest, the format of the discussions is something that I'm still uncertain about, but we've been building on. With a group of people who don't really know each other well from the start, I find it hard to confidently foster good connections and conversations. So in so many of the past groups and communities of practice, we've had shared readings, which I think can offer a good structure for good conversations. So most of our meetings had a reading, many of which were drawn from the sources for this presentation and Kayla's earlier talking. But we also built a lot of time in for checking on one another, talking about our challenges and accomplishments, sharing stories. etc. And in our most recent meeting, instead of having a reading, we just had each group member submit a question they had for the group, drawn from a question that they were asking themselves, a situation or a decision they had at work. As we look at continuing this program, I really am thinking and looking for input about what people might want from a program like this. How do we best facilitate connections and mutual support? When do we try to structure interactions, and when do we just let people talk for themselves about what they want to talk about? Um, I would say too that this conference has reminded me of the knowledge, experience, openness, and warmth of the NASIG community, and I want to find more ways to tap into these resources throughout the year and not just during this 1 week of the conference. So I think Kayla might have more to talk about for the peer mentoring program, but I really am looking forward to the questions sections, the comments section, so that we can talk about this more and what others would like from the NASIG community as far as peer mentoring. And I also will put my email into the chat. So if you have other ideas after the conference or after the session, feel free to reach out to me.
I just have one final slide. Yeah, so we'd love to hear from you now. Do you have any questions about the presentation? Any experiences you want to share with either with peer mentoring or with burnout? Or do you have any thoughts on how we can move forward with a peer mentoring program for NASIG? And I think at this point, I think I'd like to stop sharing if that's okay. I'll put my email in the chat too. I'm gonna catch up with the chat now. Oh, so Jackie asked a great question. Do you feel there could be space for those working outside academic libraries who might have similar experiences? Oh yeah, I think so. We just focused on, I guess, the NASIG people that we knew just to start with. I think it could be open to anybody, really.
Yeah, it's something I think a lot about in these groups, and how I would want to structure them in the future is how similar do you want people? On one hand, it's really nice to have a lot of shared experiences, but it's really nice to have diversity too, because you get those differences of perspectives. And so that is something like, how far outside of your core librarianship do you want to go to get those other experiences and points of view? I haven't figured that out.
Okay, I can read this next one. I just had to type out that other one because I can't actually put anything in the Q&A as a panelist. So we have a question. Have you all considered any sort of social platform to connect people, an asynchronous way to connect and have some of the breakout and small group sessions?
So I attended the poster sessions yesterday, and I saw that some students were, and I believe it was the person asking this question was involved. Yes, so we thought about it. I mean, so I think at this point, if we wanted to just get a method down, if it became a bigger thing, I think either some sort of social platform should be involved. Because we only had 5 people, we really just had Zoom and email. But I do think having doing this on a social platform is a good idea.
Yeah, I think there's always trade-offs, and I have, like, in the NASIG mentoring program, we thought we could do like a group on LinkedIn, and so we got people to sign up on LinkedIn, and it didn't quite take off. So getting that adoption is really hard. Part of what we wanted to do with the pilot program here was just make it really simple but make it like a commitment to. And so like everyone shows up and we all have our cameras on and talk to each other. And so that's really, on the one hand, simple, on the other hand, demanding too. So trade-offs again.
So I put one in the chat, but there's a couple in the Q&A first here. An attendee asks, I would like to start a peer mentoring group at my library to help with presentations, papers, common struggles, and those who are trying to move from staff to librarian positions. I would like to do this informally without library admin oversight. Do you have any tips for starting this?
I would say certainly identifying people that you think would be interested and kind of reaching out to them again informally, as you said. It certainly should be like a group process, how you want to go about it. Do you want in-person meetings? Do you want Zoom? Definitely make it definitely make it as much of a community as you can, even from the start.
Yeah, I have some experience. At my last job, it was a tenure track job, and I had a research club that I started. So just anyone who was interested in research. Some people were tenure track faculty, some were staff who were interested in librarian positions, many of them in library school while working in a non-faculty, non-librarian job. I really like a semi-formal approach. That way, people feel like it wasn't officially sanctioned. It wasn't officially a working group or whatever libraries call their committees. But it also was during work time, which I felt was really helpful. It was adjacent to lunch, but not considered your lunch break. The and so people, I felt like it was a kind of a good mix of that. And so depending on how supportive your institution is, I would really recommend trying to hit that semi-organized state. But I started one as a first year librarian. I kind of just showed up and I'm like, I'm on the tenure track and I don't have a lot of research. I need people to read drafts, and I committed to reading anything that anyone would post and that kind of stuff too. And so I think there's a lot of room to just jump in and figure it out as you go, which is a lot of what Kayla and I are doing on this program too.
Another question, do you ever find that people experience concentration issues in line with burnout? I find that I can only thrive when I'm busy, whereas when I have the time to go slower, I struggle. I think this overshare probably means I'd benefit from a scheme like this.
That's interesting. I do think concentration issues are in line with burnout. At some point, you just get overloaded. The second part was especially interesting to me, that if you're keeping yourself busy and you're not slowing down, that's but I think that is sort of in line with the research. I mean, didn't because I'm not a doctor, I didn't really want to get into it a whole lot, but like if you're in that stress cycle, you have to find a way to release it, right? But if you're slowing down, you do start to feel the burnout when you are slowing down, because if you're just stuck in the stress cycle, you're just gonna see. I'm not a doctor, I shouldn't be explaining these things.
I had something I've been reading about recently of like disfluency, or the act of like slowing down and breaking apart things that you might rush through otherwise. And so I am kind of the achievement oriented, like task focused type of person. And so I find that I can slow down by like focusing in and zooming in on something. So instead of just like, I can look at the CPU cost per use of all these titles at once, I can like look at each individual item and go through the data to kind of like check what I'm doing and to learn a lot of things that I might miss if I were trying to just rush through it. So still activity, but not necessarily like as fast as possible.
Thanks. I love the idea of this. I put a question in the chat. Have you thought of a good way to publicize this within the community? But I also want to add on to that without it getting too large. You mentioned you like to keep the group sort of small, whether that's, having several small breakout groups, or I think it's such a great idea. And I think a lot of people would love to explore this with you. How might you publicize it, and what might you do to keep it from getting too large?
That's another thing that Kayla and I have been talking about too, is like, how do we want to go about like getting a group? We could just put it out to everybody. I think um, it might help to like start gathering people who might be interested in leading a group. And by leading, I mean just like setting up the Zoom sessions and like helping think of conversation starters or things to read, and then basing how much capacity we can fill off of that that first round of volunteers go for the next round of volunteers. But we're really open to ideas and want to have conversations with others. Um,
All right. Are there any other questions for our panelists?
I see Wendy had a comment about talking in real time and also having some kind of a space where you can keep up. I think that's a really good idea, especially for kind of extending the program. Like this program that we've started with was just a 6-month commitment, and we didn't want to ask more of that. But I kind of want to stay in touch with people in a somewhat less formal way, perhaps. And so I think building a community in Discord or something over the long period could be a really nice thing to do too.
Yes, Beth also has a great comment in the chat about taking pleasure in doing what Kayla had mentioned. Those with more job security and autonomy need to fight structures that create precarity, scarcity, and competition, especially in institutions in which librarians have faculty status. Shared governance committees allows an opportunity to do this. And I realize that there are some places that probably don't have a structure like that, or, committees that allow that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I really like this comment. So I was in a paraprofessional role for years, and I remember just sort of the inequities that came from having like the faculty versus staff or whatever. And I want to, now that I'm in more of a leadership role, I don't want to forget that, and I want to keep working for the best conditions for people that report to me now. So I really liked Beth, I really liked your comment. Thank you.
We have a comment from Beverly.
Yeah.
Mentoring can have the connotation of advice or advisors. I wonder if another term, getting at the community aspect, would be more welcoming. Not sure I'm saying this well.
I know what you mean, but I think that's why we're putting the peer part on it. I do see what you're saying, because sometimes more formal mentoring programs can have that advisor kind of weird hierarchical thing, even, oh, I'm the person that knows things and you're the person that doesn't. We were hoping that the peer mentoring, the peer part would make it feel a little bit more equal, give it more of a feeling of community. But I do think that's a good comment.
Yeah, it's to some extent you have to ask, like, is peer mentoring a contradiction of terms in itself? And I think it really depends on how you think about the mentoring relationship. And even when I'm mentoring students, like they're also mentoring me, even though like I've been in libraries for a while, they have a lot of perspectives. And so I think once you realize that all mentoring relationships are go both ways, then the contradiction kind of slips away. But I'd also be fine calling it like nascent communities of practice or something too. Yeah, because I shared learning is really the key in any of the relationships as I see it.
A question from Tracy. Since the group had the label peer, is it geared just towards librarians? How do people in a staff role fit in? Or is that another group?
I wasn't thinking, go ahead. I wasn't thinking of it as just for librarians. I've been pretty intentional of using the term library workers when I'm talking about this. I would like it to include anybody who works in a library. And I feel like if there are differences in the roles, we could learn from those differences in that group setting.
Yeah, I think yeah, peer is another term that I use very loosely. It's like everybody who works with me is my peer. Like that's just how I think of it, but I recognize that's different. I also think it there's something to be said again, trade-offs between like would people who are library staff want to have a groups just with library staff, or would they rather have a mix, or like figuring out again that similarity, like how much do you want somebody who's in a different position from you, or how much do you want someone from a similar position? Something that I think a lot and would like to help people connect to the people they want to connect to.
From Wendy, wondering if Zoom groups can be broadly for library workers, but Discord could have different channels for paraprofessionals, department heads, and also more by role, school communications, cataloging, e-resources. This might be making it too complex.
It does sound complex, but it also
School
does sound good.
or scholarly communication. Apologies.
Yeah. I was going to say it does sound complex, but also, our work is becoming more complex, right? We need to find a way to manage that together. So, yeah, I think this is a good comment. Something to think about. I did see Johanna's comment about that the peer here means tech services folks, and I feel like that's fair. That is sort of what I had in mind when I was talking about this presentation and peer mentoring.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. Are there any other final questions for our presenters today?
Thanks,
Beth, who put it in a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Beth.
I miss you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for saying hi and all your great comments, everyone.
Yeah,
right.
please feel free to reach out afterwards.
Yes.
We really do want this to be a community effort.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks so much to you both and to everyone else. Enjoy the last few sessions of the conference today. And I'm really excited to hear and explore more about this as well. So thank you.
Bye. Thank you.